Can you
6.
for 6? Put it in for
Oh, that counts. Really want to sit that far away.
Thank you, Mrs. DeGraw. We will go ahead and call this hearing to order. This hearing is an open format, so we do want to hear your comments. Just please wait to be recognized. We'll start. I will first turn the time over to Mr. Williams, and he will go over the proposals for us.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. For those that are watching at home, you'll see this on the screen. For those that are here, we do have the same papers that our board members are seeing right here. And so the first one I just wanted to go over was just a summary and the hearing of advertisements as part of board policy. If fees increase more than a certain percentage, then that means that an open hearing, which this is part of that open hearing. The advertisement on the hearing on the fee increase was published in the Jefferson Star as well as on our district website. Oh, thank you. Mrs. DeGraw thought I needed to be seen on YouTube. Everyone knows what I look like. So the proposed fee increases are going to be for our athletic programs and for our optional preschool program. The goal for the proposed increases is just to help cover the costs of implementing them, and we'll go into the specifics. In this summary, you can see that in our school, in our conference with other schools similar to our size as it pertains to athletic increases, the ones that we are proposing are similar to Firth and Ryrie, if not almost identical. The other two schools that have a lower pay to play with the fee increase would be Salmon, but they have a different funding process with that, where they utilize a supplemental levy that helps fund athletics, which helps keep their costs low and a lot of the travel. North Fremont also is a little bit lower. They have different elements because they are a larger district. Even though they're a smaller school, they're still part of Fremont School District. And so we'll see that sheet here in a second. The proposed increase for the monthly tuition for optional preschool would help cover program costs. Now, students who are on an individualized education program or who are receiving special services from the school district do not pay the monthly tuition. So our preschool is free for those students. We could restrict all students except for those that qualify to come. However, best practices, it's better for us to have peers that come and work with those other students, and that's what we've opened up. Our current cost for tuition for that optional preschool is $40 per month. It's proposed to increase it to $45 per month. Our preschool is offered 4 days a week for 3.5 hours a day, 14 hours a week. Busing is available in the morning and evening. Parents will pick up their children either in the AM or PM. With the proposed fee increase, parents who enroll their children in the optional preschool program would be paying 80 cents per hour. So we feel like the proposed increases for preschool are, it's not to try to cover all costs because that's not the purpose of it, but we feel it's a reasonable amount to ask on that. Pertaining to the athletic fee increases, I'll just go over the summary of that. We have pay to play is proposed to increase to $100 per sport from $75, and junior high to be at $50. There's a suggestion that we leave cross country at $75 and $40 in the junior high. Just that's the only sport that does not have officials or an equipment budget. Every other sport there has either officials or a required equipment budget on that. Rationale behind that is increased cost of officials, equipment, gasoline is just increasing. There hasn't been an increase in our high school budget for over 7 years. Cost of officials, I know you yell at officials when you're at the games, but we can yell at them even more because they are earning every ounce of that 11% increase in the last 3 years. But there's also a mileage attached to it. So it's not just a game fee for officials. If an official comes from Mackey, which we do have officials from Mackey, that's $180 just for travel that we pay to that official on top of the game fee. And so if an official comes from Rexburg, then that's like $30 to $35 that's on there. And that's an IRS amount rate that is contracted with the 6 district officials. I put in here just on number 2, this is not an increase, it's just it was on discussions before about activity cards. And so the activity card will continue to be $40 for both junior high and high school. Those funds are split by athletics, student council, and student body activities. They will be required for individuals participating in a sport. The reason for that, some might ask, well, why are we having a proposal where this has been going on for years? It's something that's similar in other districts. But an issue with that is basketball season, for example. The kid comes in, I guess they could play in a freshman class, but if they want to stay to watch the JV or the varsity, technically without an activity card, they should pay to go into that. It just makes it easier to make sure all the students are accounted for on that. The junior high activity card will help build a budget for uniform rotation as well as their student council. This year with COVID, the junior high student council is not as active as it could be. We have plans in place to make that active, and they will be needing the funds to be able to utilize with that. The other increase that's going to be proposed is on season passes. The increases are as follows. Family passes, $200. Right now, our family pass is $120 for all events, which is extremely low and does not help cover the cost at all. When we looked out and visited with other schools, Ryrie, for example, has their individual all-season sports pass at $120, which is identical to our current family pass. As we looked at the different passes to say, well, the purpose of this wasn't just to increase costs and just gouge people. It's trying to figure out a balance between, can our programs have enough money to operate and not just barely squeak by, but maybe have something where we can cover all the different costs. And we've been looking at that, and we've talked about that in other work meetings. But our proposal would be to go away from the couples pass and just create an individual pass. That's for obvious reasons. There's a lot of differences in families, family units, family structures. Couple passes aren't necessary because we could have an individual pass. 2 individual passes equals a couple pass. And if you look at the format there, the rationale behind this as our admin committee met, that $200 as a family pass, $150 would be equivalent to a couples pass at $75 each. And then we put a children pass for $50. This would be required for 1 per family for all children in the household, grades K through 6. So if I have 4 kids that are in grades 4 through 6, I just need to buy one $50 pass to get them all in. And that would be the equivalent of potentially a family pass. If I'm a single parent, I don't need to buy a family pass. I can buy an individual pass and a $50 children pass. If I work at the district and my spouse works at the district, and we don't require a pass for home games, I could still purchase a children's pass for my children that are in that age. Students grades 7 through 12 would require an activity card. So you can see on the rationale that with this, it does increase it, will help us cover costs better, and it's still a great deal, we think, for what's available for the families. So we do have Mr. Hadley who helped develop that. He is here, Madam Chair, that if we do need to call on him, I think he wants the camera turned on him when he talks. But I'll turn the time back over to you, Madam Chair, and to the board in this open session for questions or comments.
I have a question. Do we know currently what the cost is for each individual sport?
Like to run it?
Like to run it. So like football, what are the costs associated with that per player? Do we know that? So that we know that whatever amount we're setting is going to cover the necessary costs.
I think part of that would be the philosophy behind it. Mr. Hadley, you probably have an approximate number. I'll let you have that. But part of it's also, what's our philosophy going to be on programs? Because you look at football is expensive to run, but it also makes the most money.
Right.
And so you balance that. Football, basketball, both boys and girls, pays for baseball and softball. And so that's, on one hand, we could look at that and say, we find out how much it costs, and I'll have him answer the question on that. But if that costs a lot more, shouldn't we be charging those kids to play football more? You know, but at the same time, that program is helping the others. So I guess I'll have Mr. Hadley answer that question. I don't know, and
Well, then my other question is, what sports are lumped under this as sports? Are we including cheerleading? Are we including soccer? Like, what are all the sports associated with this?
Okay, so to try and answer your first question, we do not have a set amount of what it costs for each sport. For us to be able to try to determine mileage and what we pay for transportation compared to equipment and that, we have an amount that we know we've spent on a yearly average for all of our sports, and trying to, with these fees and that, they kind of all encompass. We could say we could make football pay more, but then they get their gate. Well, to turn around to a baseball team, it would cost a kid $700 to play baseball, to pay for their equipment, their uniforms, and their transportation because they don't have a gate. So we've never really broke it down by individual sports, just because boys basketball and girls basketball and football, basically those gates, volleyball about breaks even, not quite, but those other three sports pay for softball, baseball, cross country, track, those sorts of things. So I really don't have that. Sports that we consider sports are IHSA sponsored activities, so cheerleading is involved in that. So it is volleyball, cross country, football, cheerleading, boys basketball, girls basketball, wrestling, softball, baseball, and track here at West Jefferson. Soccer is not, because although soccer is sanctioned, it's not recognized here at West Jefferson as a school sport.
And Mrs. Rigby, can I follow up with that? I think we could go and find an average by finding the busing and how much the football reconditioning, and have an average of that. We just haven't at this point, because we didn't explore the option of having a higher cost for things like football. We were trying to figure out a balance. The closest thing we had to a difference in cost of sport would be for cross country to be a little bit lower, because that was the only one that we could, as we looked at that.
So would track be the same? Would track be the $100, or would it?
Track would be, but you have to remember the equipment in track. By the time you bring in all of the starting blocks, the pole vaulting, the hurdles, track is probably one of the more expensive sports we have. I don't know, Mr. Hadley, would track be higher than football?
Track is, in my guess, as I look back over in my time here, track's a little bit less than football, simply because of paying of officials. If we didn't have to pay football officials, track would be more expensive than football actually is.
Mrs. Perkins?
And I didn't get paid for being the starter at the last one, just so you know.
Question, once they pay their fee for pay to play, do they have any other fees?
They have activity card and pay to play, and then depending on the sport, some sports have spirit packs, practice jerseys, but those are all paid not by the school. Any spirit packs, any travel uniforms, anything like that is paid by the families.
So they do have extra fees after they pay to play.
Most of our sports do, but they get warm up shirts or practice jerseys, or
Do they keep these uniforms throughout?
all that individual stuff. Their uniforms they don't, because those are bought by school, but all of the other stuff they do.
And who officiates at track if we don't have officiators?
We have a starter, and
You?
it's been Mr. Williams. He's been trained and
Moonlighting.
And I get a whole little gun, I guess I can say that. On school. With blanks in it.
Who's on the other end to say who wins?
we have a lot of volunteers for track.
Oh,
John
that's what
Hanson,
we do.
Melinda Schweeder,
Yes, it's a,
Bailey Cloddle, Dave Guimar. I mean, there are a lot of volunteers. We only host one plus this year district tournament, at the high school level and one at junior high, but we have a lot of great people that volunteer their time for that.
Okay, thank you.
What is a spirit pack? What does that include?
It's different for everything, you know, for me as a boys basketball coach, my spirit pack was my practice gear. So it's the stuff that the kids wore to practice every day so that we look similar. We could be blue and white at practice and split teams. For some, you know, the spirit pack is the sweats that they wear to travel to games with. And a lot just depends. Some of our programs fundraise for those as their one fundraiser. Other programs, the kids or the families pay for it.
Do you think that this increase, pardon my voice, I'm having allergy problems. Do you think this increase is going to take care of our financial problems?
I don't think it'll take care of them. I think that we're, you know, I look and I worry about what the price of gas is going to be and what mileage is going to be. My goal is, as I brought this to the table to start with, was two things. Number one, to be able to, we're losing about $16,000 this year because of COVID reasons and gates and some of that stuff. So I don't want families next year to have to recover that. That's not part of it, but it also means I don't have any extras to move forward. Rough guesstimate, these increases is going to put, if the board votes yes to the pay-to-play increase and the pass increase, it's going to increase somewhere between $5,500 to $6,000 more next year.
That's all. And we needed a little more than that, didn't we? In our other talks.
Depending on, yeah. And as I've mentioned this before, as an athletic director, I would love to be able to have enough in an account. We work from 0 to 0. I'd love to be able to have enough into account that we could buy a little bit nicer things for some of our teams, equipment wise, and that, you know, it's amazing. We don't have ball bags. Hardly any of our team have ball bags or equipment bags right now. And I just wish that part of my goal is to come up with ways that we can eventually have what I would say is up to par with others.
Madam Chair, if I could make a point, on our regular meeting, which will start directly after this hearing, we do not have as an action item to make a decision tonight on these increases. The purpose for that is to allow until our next meeting that we will put that on with these increases. That will allow you as board members to receive feedback from patrons as well as they could reach out to the district. These will be the ones that we propose. But this feedback, it's on the discussion, just in case there's any follow-up that you want to talk about.
Does the board have any more questions or comments?
Well, I do want to comment that I appreciate the explanation for the additional $40 activity card because I didn't fully understand, but when it was explained that if a student stays for additional games after their own game, then that basically covers their fee to be there to watch. So I appreciated that.
Thanks.
Mrs. Perkins, did you have something?
I just want to know how you feel.
Mrs. Dowd.
I have a question about, it says this will be for 7 through 12. But if we have 6th graders that are wrestling and doing track and things, would they need an activity card as well if they're doing the sports in 6th grade? So would it be, the children pass would be grades K through 5? Because where you have some 6th graders involved, would they still have to pay the fees for like wrestling or?
That's a really good question, Mr. Hadley, if you
The
want to.
reason we didn't include 6th grade is because not all 6th graders can participate in all junior high sports. They can participate in track and cross country. So instead of trying to make a secretary try to do that. And wrestling, yes, thank you. We just thought if we left it at K through 6, that was maybe a little bit easier to.
So they would have to pay to play, but not their activity card?
That was what I had originally proposed, just because of that. We're trying to make it so that somebody doesn't go, well, I'm going to go do this sport and not do this sport because I don't have to pay for an activity card here and I do here. So we're trying at the 6th grade at that level to be able to just say, they can still fall under a family pass. That's what my rationale was to start it to be, that could be changed, so that was my rationale.
Do you see a downside one way or another? It's a good question. I'm just curious.
No, well, I was just curious for clarification purposes. I don't know that if I have a kid playing 6th grade, I would just think that you would pay activity card, and because if they're playing a sport, they do activity card because it goes towards uniform rotation, other things for both grades. Not that it matters either way, but that's just
That's a good point.
because they're still,
That's
what it goes towards, which I think is smart too.
that's something that we could look into and have potentially a uniform a uniform fee for those 6th graders. Like if we looked at that and said a portion of what the junior high pays for those 6th graders, but again, it goes back to the rationale. It's just one more increase somewhere, but the money has to come from somewhere. We don't have that printer at the district office.
You need to get one.
One plus side of that is that it is cheaper for the 6th grader to get an activity card than say an individual pass. That is $5 cheaper. So maybe that is an advantage if they did just like a parent pass and I know that if my kids are doing sports, I'm fine with putting towards, and the things that it goes towards junior high, because they're involved in junior high activities too.
Yeah, I think we could go back and discuss that as before the final proposal comes to the board. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Okay. Is everyone comfortable with the increase of $100 from 75? Does that seem feasible from those that have students that have participated?
My kid pays it every week, so. Make my kids do it.
How about preschool proposals? Anything on, before we get to preschool, Mr.
I was
Hadley?
just gonna mention, if anyone is interested, I mean, they're not to the penny amounts, but if anyone wants to contact me and get an idea of where we're spending money, why this fee increase, where we're starting zero and at zero, you're welcome to call me and I'll try to explain that breakdown of what we pay in mileage, what we pay in fees to the state and to the district and equipment budgets and all of those things. I'd be willing to provide any of that. It will be close. It won't be exact, but it will be close.
So an increase like this, will it cover uniforms so that the girls and boys junior high level do not have to share?
No, but the way we are doing it now, we increased the pay-to-play for junior high. That is covering junior high uniforms, I hope. I think right now we actually have done well enough that next year we'll have new wrestling singlets and boys uniforms and girls uniforms at the junior high.
Isn't that disgusting with the wrestling singlets? I mean, like, girls don't share spandex, you turn your spandex in. I don't know.
I don't think they should
I don't have
share.
wrestlers, so
They wash them.
I do watch them. That's just that was just a.
Laurel, to speak on that, because we've had conversations about uniforms, and do we push that cost back to the athlete? Because if they don't, that would just be one more cost for them. And maybe there'd be a lot of people that feel the same way to say, that's so gross. I want to buy my own that nobody else has tried on or used. But that's where we struggle with how do we have a program that just doesn't gouge everybody for everything? And I appreciate Mr. Hadley going through this process and we had a lot of different discussions and devil's advocate and going back and forth. What about this? What about that? And really there's not a perfect answer because we're not going to cover everything. I think we could probably ask for 150 and still be close, but we feel like 100 is going to get us closer to where we need to go and see where that takes us.
Where does the money come from? Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. Go ahead.
For uniforms, is that in budget somewhere?
Right now,
Or does it come from?
right now that's our hay. We've gotten all of our uniforms rotation and state travel has come from our hay fundraiser.
Where did it come from before? Hay fundraiser?
That's a really good question. I was actually visiting with Jimmy the other day, where she was on the board in 2015-ish, right, Jimmy? Trying to figure out what they did, and I probably need to make a phone call to Frank Bunce, who's a lot of our teachers here. He mentioned that at a time to Jimmy that the uniforms they kept were on an inventory list, possibly because the district did have to keep that because they used district funds to purchase it. But then when the recession first hit in 2009, a lot of those things were cut. So that's something that I still need to look into. And so to answer the question on where are we going, we know it's not, the Hay fundraiser has been great. This is not a critique towards those who've donated. They've been generous and it's helped the district out. But philosophically, as a superintendent, it's hard for me to look at a fundraiser at that magnitude that is supplanting what the district should probably be doing. And so the board in previous meetings, in work meeting discussions, nothing on a vote, they've showed that we need to look for that. We need to find a way so our things like uniforms aren't always falling back on a Hay fundraiser, and that the Hay fundraiser can be used for something that like a booster club, which I see a lot of booster club members here in the audience, they could utilize that as a way to help out if that's what they want to do. But it shouldn't be something that the district is saying, let's do this Hay fundraiser so we can put it into our budget. Fundraisers need to be with a specific purpose in mind to help out. And I've loved the ideas that it's not a booster clubs moment, but really the booster clubs come up with some great ideas on how they could utilize that to help support the athletics in the district. And so part of that is at the district level, we need to figure out things like uniform rotations. Whose responsibility is that? And we're looking into that for sure. But if you want to buy your own singlet, go ahead.
Somebody out there wrestling.
Mrs. Beacom, did you?
Yeah, I have a question. This is the first time I've seen maybe on paper a little bit of an explanation, but when you pay for your child to do pay-to-play, what can I expect my kids to get from that? Anything, or is it just you now get to be on the team? Because when there's a lack of things for your student that is participating, it's hard to be like, well, I paid all these fees, plus we have all of these other fees. So the pay to play is it for equipment, officials? That's it?
So pay to play, activity cards, and gate receipts. Those three things are what we rely on for all of ours. So for the entire budget. So those are things like travel, payment of officials, fees to the state, fees to the district, equipment that all of our teams incur.
Coaches.
It does not include, the coaches is paid through the district, so it does not pay for our coaches. But fees, transportation, equipment, officials, game help, people, ticket takers, clock keepers, those sorts of things.
And that's all together, we've decided. We don't separate it out.
And
Because
the
I had a
reason-
question about cheerleaders. Why do they pay a pay-to-play to be on the cheer team? Because they're not allowed to travel, they don't have equipment, so they can use a building to practice in? Is that the rationale there?
That's part, we
They're
do get,
allowed
we
to
do
be
get
on a
them,
team?
we do get their mats. I mean, we've helped with their cheer mats. Ultimately, my goal is our cheerleaders, I would like for them to be able to go to Madison, to Highland, to the cheer competition and so that fee goes to part of that.
Okay.
Also, when we do get state tournaments, ideally in non-COVID years, I would like to make sure that we have cheerleaders that go to those state tournaments and cheer at state tournaments. And so that's my goal, is that we have cheer competitions for them besides just district and state.
And doesn't it cover like the tournament costs, your wrestlers, they charge for tournaments. So when we go to those tournaments, as well as, I don't know if volleyball too. So they charge our team to play in the tournament.
I know, I just saw it
So
as the cheerleaders didn't get to do what everybody else did, and so
they have
that's why I was
competitions and they
asking.
have to.
But
as
they
well.
didn't.
But they
Right,
did.
not
That
this-
was my
not this
my
last time.
experience.
Even
from
when I
it,
was
that
there,
is
it
what I
didn't come
saw.
from the pay to play.
So that's what I just wanted a clarification on. When I pay this, I thought something was covered, maybe other people thought uniforms were covered in a pay to play, so finding out they're not, like, okay, that's good information to have. I am also curious about why there is a sports budget affiliated with the student council and student body activities. Can you explain how those are all together and why part of this activity card goes towards And what percentage? Because it seems like there maybe isn't a lot of student body activities that I've seen. That's just my observation. Not that there isn't any or hasn't ever have been. Just looking.
75% of activity cards goes towards athletics, 25% goes towards student council, also to, if we were to have a national assembly, we brought somebody in for assembly for that. So roughly about 25% goes to student council and student activity things, and then 75% just of activity. It's not pay-to-play or anything like that, just activity.
And Mr. Headley, would the rationale behind that, because there's nothing like in law that says, the reason why I understand that we do that is if $40, and if a student wants to go watch the volleyball team or with that, they would be paying $5 a time going into that game if they were choosing to do that. And so that's why 75 usually goes to help cover the gate cost, or at least to say this is the gate portion of the activity card. And then the remaining part would go into the student council and different activities. And this last year, it has been slim, but you got to remember where we were a year ago. You guys were the teachers, and I was sitting here eating bonbons in my office. Like, we've come so far in 1 year. Like, it's hard to remember where we've come from in one year. It wasn't really eating bonbons, sorry. But we really have had our hands tied with so many things in the last 12 months. But we still had a Panther Olympics during homecoming. I know that seems like so long ago, and those funds go towards that, and a lot of different things. And so I know you were
paying for, I mean, just for instance, like prom that's coming up, to rent a DJ and a venue just for prom is going to cost us almost $1,300. And if we have 50 couples go at $20 a couple, we don't cover that. So that some of that activity card money goes towards.
And I know you weren't being negative on that, or you were just asking. Did that help answer the question?
Yeah, I just didn't know what the percentage was. Like I say, having them together, I was confused about why sports and those separate activities. But if they have their budget set out, I guess. Thank you.
Mrs. Wood?
So last year, kids got hosed. No prom, no whatever, a ton of stuff. So where did that money go to? Is it still there?
Yes.
And then what else is the Hay fundraiser covering yearly? Is it there a normal amount of whatever that's covering? Because one year I came down and helped fight for the softball fence. I know it's changed, but is there normal things that's covering?
So it covers state travel, uniform rotation. It covers, I hope you can understand, it's like our football scouting program is called Huddle, or basketball. So our filming scout stuff, that comes out of Hay fundraisers. If we have, they're depending on, 2 years ago, my first year as athletic director, 3 years ago, the Hay fundraiser paid for part of the sweeper that's out on the foot, that cleans the football field turf. It pays for part of the scoreboard. So a lot of it, it's hard to budget for, because if we have a great year with our sports teams, Hay fundraiser, the hotels and bus travel takes up a lot of that. On years that we don't, it doesn't use as much, and so we can use that at the end of the year for other things. So we don't have a set budget with it, other than uniform rotations and state hotels and travel has been designated out of that.
How often do you have to get uniforms?
We're on a 4-year uniform rotation.
Does that keep them safe? I mean, the helmets and everything, are they safe?
Oh, the football helmets and that, they have to be reconditioned now every 2 years. It costs, so we'll buy a football helmet for about $285. The rules just changed and have to be reconditioned every 2 years now. And it costs us $38 to recondition a helmet. So every year we're reconditioning probably somewhere around 20 to 25 after 8 years that won't be reconditioned after us. You have to buy new ones. Ideally, again, if we had the budget for it, I would like to buy, I would like to have helmets more than every 8 years, to be honest.
Well, what would you like to have?
I would think if we could recondition twice and then purchase, that would be ideal.
As long as we're being safe.
So we have, I think there were 5 varsity players that rented their own helmets last year.
Why?
I am really picky and I want my kid in the best because he packs the ball a lot. And concussions. So I just want him in the best helmet. So
Don't we
it's-
have the best helmets?
It's, honestly, I don't know that you can say, we just bought 12 brand new helmets for next year, but that's 12 helmets. And when you have 35 kids playing football, there aren't going to be kids that are in helmets that are 8 years old.
And if we're talking about the helmets and the safety, which is, I know where Mrs. Perkins is going with this, because you've mentioned that in a lot of your meetings, we need to do what's right for the kids for safety. Jimmy, some of those helmets that you were looking at are probably more than the $200 helmets. They're probably a $400.
Yes, so
Plus
when we
dollar
rent
helmet.
them, it's a $400. I've actually purchased 3 different helmets. I'm on my 3rd football player. So the first football player that I hadn't found this option, and his head grew. So there were 2 helmets that I purchased, and they were $300 and some dollars. The 3rd one I purchased was a $400 helmet. And then I found this option, and so it costs me $200. He gets a brand new helmet, or it's reconditioned. He's actually got a brand new helmet every time I've done it, and so that's what to me, it's cheaper than a trip to the emergency room. So, and I want him in the best helmet, and I want it to fit. So the other problem is, the different brands fit different, and so I am picky. I want it to fit right. So when I found this option, several of the other boys did it as well. But so that makes you think too. So there were 5. How many? We have 20, 25 on varsity. Not even.
Total, yeah, 20.
So if you're refurbishing, I mean, it's hard for them. You've got all these helmets because everybody's different sizes, and you've got a lot of helmets that aren't used. You know what I mean? So.
And I believe the ones that the school purchases is trying to find the best safety, but also you have to be a little bit economical
Cost, right.
with cost. And
Our
so
coach has to fit within his budget.
and so if we had $400 per student that comes in to do that at the beginning just for football, but again it goes back to bam, that just increased football costs. And so I know we could explore different things, and those are good questions, and they do relate to the pay increases, but at the same time I think that those are discussions that could continue at other times independent of the fee increases.
Any other questions or comments?
I think one thought I had that goes along with something I already stated is that would probably be when it would be good to know how much each individual sport is costing. So when you are trying to fees, to make sure we're covering everything, because it sounds like there's still going to be holes. I am under the understanding that the school isn't going to be in charge of the Hay fundraiser. It's going elsewhere.
Mhm.
So that $20,000, how is the school going to manage now? Even with, I mean, the increase, you said $6,000 is all it's going to bring you in. That's not near
We're
close. So
we're looking.
We're hoping that the board is going to look at the possibility of budgeting some more money towards those things, make up that. And if they can't, then we're going to ask the Booster Club to help us support in some of those things. Or we may have to get to a point where if our teams qualify for the state tournament, families are gonna have to pay for their own hotel rooms and
But
have to get over
to
it.
address that, we are looking into a way that will happen. It's been probably 15 or 20 years since maybe that's even been considered because of the recession. But fundamentally, it just does not feel right for us to be having a fundraiser to create basically an operating expense at the school district. And that's gonna we're gonna have to figure that out on that. And hopefully we're not coming back in a year from now saying, all right, $300 PaytoPlay.
Or we want the fundraiser back.
If you want your kid to play, I think a lot of us are willing to pay, but do we know how much it costs for them to play? Not really.
Well, and again, the target moves on the athletic budget. If we go to state, we pay more, and we all want our kids to go to state, so that's one of the things that we have to look at. So, but this has been really good feedback. We really appreciate everybody taking the time to come give that feedback during this time. And thank you, Mr. Hadley, for everything on putting that together.
I did want to say, I know that Mr. Hadley did not take this increase lightly, and I know that he spent hours researching what has been spent and working with Mrs. Mays on looking at the budget, and so I know that he wouldn't propose this if he wasn't confident that this wasn't the best course of action.
Thank you, Mrs. DeGraw. Okay, well, we'll move into our regular board meeting then.
If you want to make a reminder, as we move into regular board meeting, that does limit our ability to go back and forth, and it moves back into a business meeting
Yes.
with the exception of those that sign up for public comment.
Feel free to stay. But we will go ahead and call the regular board meeting to order. Mrs. Rigby, if you would lead us in the pledge. I
Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, the floor will be open for a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Approval of motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
Is there a second?
Can I ask a question?
Yep, as soon as I get a second.
You're gonna have a second? Oh,
And then I'll ask for discussion.
second.
Is there any discussion?
Carrie, did you, there's one part there that you didn't get fixed. And it says Willie Schmidt on the executive committee. Chair. You fixed this. You fixed the other one. Mr. Williams, did you pull that up?
So on the board minutes from the 18th,
Yes, you can pull that up.
This is on the first page, I think.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, go down. Keep going. Keep going. Right there. 1A.
Oh, I fixed the other one, yes.
Yeah,
I will fix that.
okay.
Okay. Okay, is there any other discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Mr. Williams, your
Right.
report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Superintendent report for April 15th. Just a legislative update. Budgets are still not finalized at the state level. It is going to be, the COVID money will be reallocated to cover discretionary funding. So there was a concern that we would be left below for this year's budget. After visiting with Senator Burtonshaw and some of the changes, it was made clear that the district will receive the amount of money that is being reallocated or taken away from the discretionary funding. So basically, the COVID money that was given to the district needs to be used in specific ways that the legislature is directing. And so it does not allow us to do anything extra with any of the COVID money. And so if there's anybody reading things in the newspaper that schools are floating in COVID cash, that doesn't happen, because what happened is our discretionary money was decreased by $4,000, which is the equivalent of almost per unit. And so, but we should get it in a covered, but that's with ESSER 1 and ESSER 2. ESSER 3, we still do not know. I'm crossing my fingers that we will be able to utilize that to potentially look into additional counseling services for kids with the clinician to come out with meeting with that. Those things cost money. We were only given $3,000 this last year to do that. With the money that was available, we could have. But I do want to say just a special thanks to Senator Burton Shaw. He's an advocate for public education. He took the time to come and visit with me here in the office. He has a tough job. And you can see with the way that he votes is he values public education. And a tricky part with the things that are being proposed is money being taken away from public schools. I work for a public school district. The kids that come to West Jefferson is a public school district. The funds on some of these bills that are being proposed is to take money that should be allocated for public schools and put it into home schools, private schools, parochial schools. And it's proposed in a way of, well, it's parent rights. Parents should have the right to that. If that's the case, then back off on all the requirements and restrictions that I have to have with every dollar that I spend, because that money can be put into a private school, into a home school, and those families don't have the same accountability measures that we have. So I appreciate Senator Burton Shaw. He does a tough job. He's always open and willing to take time to visit. And you know, we will get through this year's budget. It's going to be a little bit tricky. He has no say in how that money was reallocated when it comes to the COVID money. He's not on that, but he listened to us, and he's doing the very best he can. And so I just wanted to have that update to the board, because I know that you guys were included in some of that communication. Another thing, just for board member, Mr. Schmidt is not here. I know that's why Madam Chair is sitting a little bit further away from the superintendent today. But Mr. Schmidt is in Boise representing our region at the ISBA executive session. And so he's just fulfilling that opportunity. There is a board training opportunity for us as a board. We don't, again, this is just for information, on the 28th of April from 1 to 4 o'clock, the ISBA Spring Leadership Institute. I've asked Mrs. DeGraw to look into that. So if you guys are interested in that, get back to me and we will set that up. It is one that I do want to attend personally. And so if there are board members that would like to go, we could get that set up. Update on technology. From our last meeting, we had the purchase order go through for the Chromebooks, and guess what? We already have 50 out of 75, which is so different than last year where we ordered them at this time and we didn't get them until November. So we're already along that line. Mr. Weeks, and again, shout out, thank you to Mr. Weeks for helping set up our technology and getting this going, but he is working on getting those Chromebooks updated. And also during spring break, we had a lot of wiring going through the building with the E-rate wiring. And so this is connected with our maintenance and grounds. The drop ceilings were completed during spring break. So those 4 classrooms already have their drop ceilings in. This is going to get things set up for our maintenance crew to be able to get in and do those remodels in the classrooms already. So that was very fortunate. Appreciate Mr. Soderquist being able to get those people in here to take care of that. Our maintenance and grounds crew are continuing with the installing of the interactive monitors. They are chipping away at it, and we're seeing more and more of those monitors, just like we have right here, put out through all the classrooms. And so their goal is to have it all in before summer so they can focus 100% on the summer projects. Really appreciate all that they're doing. Our food service, Mrs. Ward and Mr. Soderquist have been working together on some remodel plans using the budget that Mrs. Ward has. And so these are budget plans that she has, and also from some of the equipment that she's received on grants that we haven't been able to put in yet. They are working on getting that updated in the lunchroom, specifically with a dishwasher and I don't think they're gonna work on the stove right now, but it's more the dishwashing area and the bins for cleaning. And so appreciate them with that. Our elementary schools, Tarleton Elementary, they had their sneeches on the beaches party. There's probably some that are in the audience that came and helped out with that. what an awesome thing. Even Madam Chair was
was
there running that, and it was a fun thing to have for those kids here. A lot of hard work. Thank you to Mrs. Tolman. She put a lot of effort into planning that. I think we might have pushed her over the edge a little bit on her stress that day, but you know, she did a great job, and the kids loved it. Assessing has started in the elementary. Our 3rd grade and 4th grade are nearly completed on that. Also, just an update on our 95% core curriculum. It has arrived also, and we have a training set up for May 7th on that professional day, where we'll invite the teachers K through 4 and also the paraprofessionals to be able to have that training. The training is going to be done virtually. Initially, when I talked about the training, they were wanting to send somebody here. We're getting proficient in using the Zoom technology, and I think we'll be able to handle that. They worked with us and cut the cost in half because we're a smaller district, as I asked with them. So we'll be able to have up to 50 people in those trainings on that.
Do you think our substitutes need to be there?
We could invite them if they're interested. It's not as
to
crucial have the substitutes there, but we could put that invite out.
Okay.
That's a good suggestion. Hamer Elementary had a field trip today to the aquarium, Idaho Falls. I almost said aqua unicorn earlier. And they also had an egg drop science experiment going on up there. So kids really enjoyed that, and the feedback has been positive. Secondary schools, high school and junior high, just to highlight the Business Professionals of America. I recognize these students in an earlier superintendent meeting, but they will be competing virtually in the national competition. Again, what a bummer. Laurel, I know you're in here, and you said that all the kids last year, you know, was a bummer for them. It's still happening with some of these kids. These kids can't go to Orlando. That's where they would have been able to go to compete. And so they will be competing virtually April 26th to the 9th. Bailey Cottle in multiple events, Linda Munoz, Peyton Scott, and Hiram Spencer. So congratulations and good luck to those students. Our math department has been finishing up some professional development. I do have a summary. Mrs. Bell wrote that summary up. And so I'm just going to go back and pull that math department summary. So there was a 2-day workshop from Solution Tree. This was virtual, where the math department came together. I'm not going to read all of this, but overall, this was an excellent workshop, specifically for the math teachers, high school and junior high both. Yep, they combined them all, and she recommends this workshop. It's one of those things that I've already reached out to Mrs. Bell, and she is going to come in to a work meeting during the day when we have our next is doing. I know we've had had questions over our POM meetings and things. Well, what's going on with our math department? Why is this happening? Mrs. Bell is a strong advocate of the direction that we're going with math, and she wants to come and be able to share that with the school board and get that out. But one of the highlights of this is the I can't remember the gentleman's name, but one of the math experts from Solution Tree was the one presenting this. Tim Knoll, I believe is his name of that. And he was able to interact with them, where pre-COVID, we would have never had this opportunity because you'd only have been able to send them to a giant conference. And with this, they're able to have that interaction. It was also done in conjunction with teachers from Idaho Falls District 93. So it wasn't just our teachers, and it gave them a chance to collaborate. And so, you know, Mrs. Bell has a great vision for our math department and its program. And Mr. McDonald has allowed her to have all the things that she needs to be able to have these opportunities for professional development. In this highlight also, Mrs. Bell is serving as a regional lead teacher with the Idaho State University math, not department, but just the regional math professional development group. And so she is actually going to be teaching at a conference in the summer as this lead. And so we're lucky to have a fabulous teacher like like her and the other teachers are on board, working hard, doing a great job with that. And so, you know, we may not be perfect, but we're trying to improve and working in that direction. For the professional learning day tomorrow, April 16th, we will be having some teacher training on the new learning LMS system, which is Otis. And so that will be taking place here. That's Friday. Tomorrow is Friday.
Oh,
So
this is
What
our
is your
first.
timeline for Otis, do you think?
we will be implementing it into in fall.
Using it?
Yep, we will be transitioning into that into the fall. So we're getting our feet wet with it. Like any LMS system, it's not going to be perfect, but we're hoping that it will help us accomplish the goals that we're seeking to do. Our CSI Up, which is our junior high school improvement group, they had their end of year meeting. A lot of positive things. Our junior high has not taken the ISAT, but let's see the progress. I wanted to highlight something here with our English department. And so our 10th graders just took the English ISAT. And if you look at the results on the English ISAT, this is a very positive outcome that 73% of our students were proficient or advanced on the English ISAT. And if you do the math, this is the group that 4 years ago would have had scores that created the CSI opportunity for us. So
That's a good way to say it.
yeah, so but you can see that we are 12 points above the state average in a pandemic year. Like 73% is a high mark in a regular year, even without all of the impacts. People might ask, well, what contributes to this? Part of it might have been motivation with the students. Other things that we've tried to do is that we've done differently in years past is having 6 periods at the high school allows for English to be taken all 3 trimesters. Whereas if we would have had 2 trimester option only, with last year's COVID, you could have had a student who didn't take English in the 2nd trimester. They come to school for 2 weeks in the 3rd trimester, get kicked out of school. I'm taking it remotely. Come to school in the fall, not have it on their schedule because it's only 2 out of the 3. You could almost be a full year. And so that was one of the reasons, besides trying to streamline everything, is to have more consistency with that. And the teachers that have taught those classes live by that. I don't know if this is a direct relation to that, but it could be. And it's too early to tell because it's only our first year trying it. But
we also had some pretty good in-service
yeah, we've had really
from
good
the money that we got. We used that money wisely.
Other things I think contribute to this, when the teachers get together and they work on focusing on the core standards, I shouldn't say core because I don't want people to freak out thinking and talk about Common Core. I'm just talking about the primary or the main standards, your power standards. Our teachers are doing that. And this is reflective of them being able to, not teaching more, they're teaching more specific. And so this is those are things that we can look at, and I hope this trend continues. I hope this isn't the best news of the year on it, but I hope it continues. And I just wanted to highlight that and also say, thank you to our English department. 10th grade, majority of those students are in Mr. Taylor's classroom. And so this is really, really positive. Continue on with secondary. Kyson Gabrish had an honorable mention in the post-register all-area boys basketball team. And so that's all levels. And so that's a great honor for him to be on the honorable mention. Our National Honor Society had a blood drive. Students and faculty took place on that on March 31st. And I forgot to put on there, our juniors class took the SAT on Wednesday, yesterday, here at the district office. And so it's too early to know what those outcomes are, but we're hoping that kids took it seriously and take advantage of that. Just a couple of things coming up: Distinguished Young Women, preschool and kindergarten screenings, prom. On the May 17th, you'll see this on an action item. The Booster Club is planning an all sports banquet. Excited and looking forward to that. The high school play is a Disney Descendants. They've actually been practicing here in the gym. They were singing today. I jumped in and joined them for a second, but then they kicked me out. Those guys are doing great. They're learning it. High school graduation, May 26th, last day of the school, May 27th. We don't have a date yet on Mr. West Jeff. The junior class boys are still looking at doing that. But the end of the year is going to be here before you know it. It is flying by, and it's been a great year. I know they say that it's been a great year, even considering all the heartache.
A great year just because we were in session.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How come we're having the play right around graduation time?
That's a good question. This is the first time we've had our the play scheduled in third trimester. And when we look at the last month or the last week of the year, you're going to have a lot of things going on in graduation. And if we would have had it the week before, we would be competing with track, baseball, and softball. By the time we have this, those things are going to be taken care of. And so we recognize that some of these dates are after graduation. And I guess we're just flipping a coin, hoping those kids show up to it. But another thing that as Mr. McDonald and I, we sat down with Mrs. Erickson, I almost called her Mrs. Burnshaw, but Amanda, and said, what do you think? When would be the best time to try this? We thought that this would be an opportune time to do it just with the other activities. And it could become something that becomes a new tradition. You have parents and grandparents coming in for graduation. Maybe they can also stay for the play. You have an extra in a different trimester, like when they used to do the play first trimester, they would have to do it between girls basketball or girls volleyball, and they still were competing a little bit with football. You're not competing with any of the sports, but then you're done with your program 2 weeks with class left. And that's kind of a nightmare also as a teacher to say, hey, the final is done, and now you have 2 weeks in class. And so who knows, maybe at the end of this year, we're gonna go, wow, that was a mistake. But it also could be an opportunity where that Friday there's no school. She's planning on having a matinee and an evening show.
Are seniors in this play?
There are seniors in the play.
It's gonna be tough.
Possibly. But when I was a senior, I went to FFA a week later. I didn't leave. You know, you're not gonna miss those types of things. And it was in the olden days, but
He just called you old.
I'm not gonna even go there because I just dig a hole if I mention anything about age. But but I think we're excited for it. The kids are getting excited for it. The kids that are in it, I think they'll do it. But it could become a new tradition where that the kids are going to have a couple extra weeks to practice.
Right, but those kids that are graduating are going to be awfully busy that week with just all the things that graduation requires. They're not?
Yeah.
No.
Well, Madam
It's like
Chair,
play
we
week.
have, there's a comment in the audience, Madam Chair. Is it okay if we take it?
Number one, I have a senior boy who I said, are you gonna be, he's like, yeah, he's like, it's a lot easier to do that week than the week before. They're doing finals and doing everything else to finish graduation. Number two, a lot of the lead roles are juniors, which they'll be back because they walk their grade, and sophomores, yeah, younger ones. The senior boys, there are a few senior boys and girls, and the girls are so excited to come back. So I think it's gonna relieve a lot of stress for seniors to have it that week than before.
I'll take your word for it.
You know, that's a good, but it's a fair question because we're trying something new, but I'm not afraid to relook at something and say, oh, that didn't work. Let's go a different
We'll see how it
direction.
goes.
And if not, there's a cameo spot for you last minute.
I'll be there.
Madam Chair, that's all I have on my.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Did you have any public comment sheets, Mrs. DeGraw?
I did not receive any.
Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda, financial and personnel. Before we open for a motion,
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda, accounts payable and financial report.
is there a second?
I second that.
Is there any discussion? Any questions? All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Budget hearing date. I think we have set
Yes, Madam Chair, so I'll open up that action item. As part of the annual budget process, our district will hold a public hearing that reviews our previous year's financial budget as well as the proposed one. Setting this public hearing is considered through a vote from the Board of Trustees. The district proposes that we hold this annual budget hearing on June 17th. The amended budget hearing for the 2021 will occur at 5 p.m. The 21-22 budget hearing will occur at approximately 5:30 following that. And just at the bottom, executive session may be held prior to that, determined by the board chair, the superintendent. Regular meeting will follow the budget hearing.
Okay, the floor will be open for a motion to approve that date.
Madam Chair, I move that we set the budget hearing for June 17th at 5 o'clock.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Graduation requirement appeal of student A.
Okay.
The floor will be open for a motion on that.
Madam Chair, I would like to make the motion that we waive the attendance requirement due to extenuating circumstances for student A to allow graduation dependent upon completion of required credits for graduation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Monday night activity.
So board policy requires approval of Monday night activities. The West Jefferson Booster Club is planning a year-end athletic banquet for all sports programs. The activity is planned for Monday, May 17th, 2021.
Okay. The floor will be open for a motion on that.
Madam Chair, make a motion to approve the Monday night activity on May 17th.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, question. If the boosters are not a part of West Jefferson, our district, why do they have to be approved if, say, the Distinguished Young Women does not? To hold a Monday.
Part of that is because we are looking at our athletes that are part of our program.
But those girls are,
Are they doing a Monday night activity?
yes, they're doing a practice, their practice night. Their, what's it called?
Dress rehearsal.
Dress rehearsal.
So a dress rehearsal wouldn't be an activity. That'd be just like a practice.
Sounds like an activity.
Well, aren't all activities practices? So that if that were the case, we would have to approve every single practice on Monday.
Don't we?
No, we have sports practices on Monday nights.
No, but till 6. Then they have to leave after that.
Well,
But this.
it looks like Distinguished Young Women is out of board policy then.
Well, I just had a parent call me this morning and say that the Distinguished Young Women are practicing till 9 o'clock on Monday night, and they were not happy about it, but,
Well, that's one of those things that superintendent is not aware of every single thing that happens in the district. And that's all I can say on that.
okay. All right, that's all.
Mr. Williams, would you like to?
We can, but at this point,
We could look into getting rid of this policy. Because it's ridiculous. But that's another discussion. Did we have a second on that? Yes. Yes. Okay. Is there any other discussion? All right. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Policy 4000 series, second reading.
so this is the second reading for policy 4000 series, our community relations. These are all of the policies that are required by state law for us to have in place. And those were the ones that we had. I don't believe we had any changes or updates from the first reading, and unless there are changes by the board, motion to move forward.
Okay. The floor will be open for a motion to approve the second reading.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the 4000 series policies as written.
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. And finally, the bond projects. What to do?
All right, so yeah, what to do? It's always the million-dollar question. Post-bond election survey that we conducted in 2020 indicated that 65% of the patrons favored a new project with a remodel project option. 25% favored remodel only, which is 90% of our patrons have an interest in our schools and a favorable interest in our school and its buildings and keeping up with it. There were 10% that favored no projects at all. Bonds do require 67%. Now, somebody might look at that and say, wow, you're really close. Why don't we move forward with new projects? That's what did start the conversations at that time from September moving forward. We were looking at what can we do? The previous discussions that we had about possible discussions or projects included two options, the new projects and remodel or remodel only. And these aren't finalized. These are just things that have come up on what we would look at. The new project discussions started coming from, I wanted to say stemmed from, not from the science and classroom labs, but our science classrooms at the high school are the ones that need to be remodeled. If we remodel where they're currently at, are we limiting ourselves in the future? Because once you remodel in the confines of those classrooms, you're stuck with that moving forward. And especially Mr. Packer's classroom is smaller and a bit more difficult to put the newer type of equipment into that. So science classrooms were discussed as a new project. What would we do? As those classrooms would come out from where the wrestling room is at, then the next discussion came, construction-wise, is it more economical just to square that whole section off and have other things that would benefit the kids at the school? That's where the discussion of another auxiliary gym, a weight room, fitness room built on the south side, and concessions restroom for events built on the south side, just an area. So that's what we talked about. That was with new projects and everything on the remodel only or the remodel side. The main remodels that have come up in all of our discussion, or the biggest projects on the remodels, would be the high school gym. That means the old gym for those that are listening. Paint, the floor, the roof, the seating, the bleachers, a discussion of maybe putting tables in there that come out for a commons area for the high school kids to eat in there during lunch. That would be the main focus on a remodel part for the old gym. The auditorium, curtains, lighting, heating system, sounds updates, a projector with a backdrop. Those are all things that would be needed in the auditorium and need to happen. The main gym, which is the new gym, but it's 25 years old. The roof, the gym floor, my kids were asking me, why are we green instead of blue? Because the blue color has been layered with, just said, that's just, you're colorblind, son. No. That's the new gym. That's just how we do it. But we would need about $60,000 or $70,000 to come in there, strip it down, put new paint, new logos, things like that on it. Roof, gym floor, general repair and upkeep in that building. The general repair parts would be classroom cabinets, flooring, exterior building repair. There's several places throughout the district where we just have that. Parking lots are consideration. The event parking lot out by the main gym, football field, that area is ready to be paved. We just need to move forward with it. The track is another one that needs to be repainted or resealed. The rubber is going down, the safety of that. We've had that track and football field for 15 years. And then we put on here field turf repair as well. I know my house might be burned down by the time I get home because I put this on there, but field turf does not last forever. And I have reached out to a field turf specialist to come and look at the field. I haven't been able to see how much more we have, but the life expectancy for those is roughly 10 to 15 years, and we're at 15 right now on it. We've kept it in great shape. We might be able to get a few more years out, but all of these projects are not because we're saying we need to push this on because of sports everything that we talk about here has a class that goes to that. PE classes go to the football field and track at different times. PE classes go to both the old gym and the new gym. Main gym is what we need to call that. So these are things that would go in the remodel. So this is where I'm coming back to this action item. What do we do from here on out? The factors on all of our bond discussions, our district can only bond for $12 million total. This will never be enough to build an entirely new building at one time. And so the next thing that happens is projects have to be spread out and planned. There has to be a plan looking in the future. New projects, because we can't just rely on building an entirely new building, in our district shouldn't be just considered on student growth. It also has to be considered on the life expectancy of the buildings. And that's what makes this decision so tricky when we're going. A lot of school districts, the district that I worked at previously, they could bond for a lot more money, and they could wait till kids were falling out the window to say, hey, we can show the patrons we really need extra classrooms here. But they can bond for that quicker without an impact on it.
Well, the high
Whereas-
school isn't at the age that ours is.
Yes, they're newer. And so that's what makes it so difficult. And that's where the discussions of new projects versus only remodel, combining the two. The entire time, the cost of the new projects would have to be folded into the remodel projects. None of this was ever, let's ignore the remodel projects and only go to the new projects. It's always had to be both of them. So when we started having these conversations last year with our construction manager and architect, the initial costs were estimating around $5.5 million for both the new and remodel. And that would have been something that would have put the tax levy rate about $349 per 100,000. However, with increased construction costs, things have changed immensely in the last 6 months. And this is where I really worry that if we pass this and we say what could get us for $5.5 million, we're really going to need about $7 million to cover that right now. So my recommendation to the board, I don't think we need a public meeting for me to go out and come to this realization. Like, it would not be a wise time for us to seek new projects right now. In 2 to 3 years, possibly, but we need to move forward with remodels before that time. And so I'm looking for direction from the board on where to go with this. I could go out to the community and ask them, well, hey, what do you think? But I think we're going to come to the same conclusion. It's really tricky. We would have to pass, going back from our post-bond survey, we would have to have everybody that wanted that, not lose any of those 65, and somehow convince some of the 25 to get the 50%. And this was a small number. This might even be less and more. I think it would be more difficult to sell that right now. As much as I, on a personal level would like that, but I also want to make sure that we're doing the right thing financially for the district and taking care of the things that we have. It would be worse for us to get into it right now. Now, I believe in 2 or 3 years, I'm going to say, let's suppose that we do a remodel only bond. The community is generous, like they've been in years past. They vote this through and we get it. We can come back and look at that in 2 or 3 years if construction costs come down, and we can refinance that bond to get these other projects sooner than the length of the term of what the bond is. If it's a 5-year bond, if it's a 10-year bond, we can come back sooner, relook at that, and that would, I think, put us in a better spot of knowing where it's at. So that's why I'm putting this proposal out there, Madam Chair, that we pause on the new projects at this time. But if the board directs me differently, we can continue to look at that.
I think we've all seen sheets of plywood that have skyrocketed in price, but my question is, right now, it would be approximately 7 million. What if in 2 years it's 10? That's,
Yeah, it is.
Just like, too bad we didn't do it 2 years ago or a
Right.
year ago.
You only hired me a year and a half ago. It's hard to predict the future. That's why all these decisions are so hard, because you're right, Madam Chair, it could be this was the best time to do it.
Right? We'll
But-
say, oh, we should have.
I think COVID has changed things for everybody. I think people are afraid.
They are afraid, and we had that same conversation, but we are seeing the cost per foot has gone up so much.
So much,
It's almost,
like 4 times as much for some things.
yeah,
Mm,
It is scary because you run the risk of not being able to do any of it and there are a lot of things that we need that's already gonna cost. And if we don't do those now, then
Crumbling around
1
their
year from
ears.
now, what,
we have to act, and I would hope that those that really are wanting the new construction don't see this as us wavering and saying we're giving up on the hard things. At least that's what my thought would be. But I also hope that people recognize the remodels are so important as well. So if we don't have those, then we're gonna have to come back and ask again later, because none of these, we can't just pretend that the football field is going to expire its turf one day. We can't just pretend that these buildings are getting older every single day. We have to address the needs on that.
When we had our report on our buildings, Mr. Soderquist said the people that came and looked at our buildings said that they were in such good shape because we had kept up on them.
Absolutely.
And if we lose this bond just for upkeep, we run the risk of losing our buildings.
It puts us that much further behind.
And it makes them unsafe if things don't get taken care of, things don't get outdated and repairs aren't made. It makes them an unsafe place to be.
But
So,
But this proposal is no way me going away from looking at a 50-year plan, what we have to do. I just don't think it's right now. 2 or 3 years, I think it could be. I know.
I hate to pour that much money into those old classrooms for the science rooms. when it
but
could
they're
be
not on
used.
here.
I don't think we do the science rooms right now.
We pulled off on that.
I think we do. I think for the sake of the future, and in 5 years, 3 to 5 years, if it looks like our lot as this district is just destined to be a remodel district for the rest of our existence, then that's when we jump into that. Or we look at maybe not completing the whole section, which is why our buildings look the way they do since 1956. Or 30,
We
38.
only had 65% pass it, or voted last time for it. What makes us think we're gonna go up?
We would if we didn't have all these other, I think we could, if there weren't construction costs going up
Right,
and we were looking at that, I think we were,
we're on our way to do
the
it.
feedback that I was getting from individuals
The
were,
bathroom alone, to not have to use the porta potty.
I know, we don't need a $7 million bathroom.
That's
That
true.
would have sold the whole deal though.
I think the construction costs are the things that we would lose support for that. But I don't know. I'm open to your feedback and conversations, but
Well, I mean, there were some good ideas that were proposed last time, and it's unfortunate that we weren't able to move forward then. Because I think a lot of the people that are in this room currently have students attending. And when you consider how much time your student has remaining at this school, will the students you have attending see any of these come to fruition? I don't know.
yeah.
And I think better than anything, to have things upgraded is necessary for the current students in this school to have something to use. That's necessary. But I agree with the current costs of things, passing that amount of money on to people in this district just doesn't make sense right now. But I do think we need to continue to maintain our buildings and create a space that's a good environment for our students.
I definitely want to continue to look into it if that's where the board goes for remodels now. Because the same question still doesn't go away. what do we do for a 50-year plan on that? The easy thing for me as a superintendent would be, let's just get through so I can retire and pass it on to the next sir or madam that's in this chair in the future, you know, but it aches my heart because if this could have gone now, we know that those kids in the junior high would get it. Yeah, and that's that part where I'm like, oh,
Me too.
but with the unexpected, construction costs could be worse, but they also, even if they level out, even at the very least, just level out, then that can give us at least an idea of the target we're shooting for.
By the time we got it all done, it could go up another million before it was. Yeah.
So
Are we brave enough to consider? Or are we not?
To consider new or just the remodel?
I'll tell you, my recommendation is to do repairs.
One thing that I've seen is I have friends that are currently building homes. And every week, the cost of building their home is drastically increasing and the expected finish date is drastically being drawn out. And I don't know that we want to put our district in that position.
Well, is there any other discussion on that?
So not to be, not to see this as all negative, but think of what could come from a good remodel of the high school gymnasium.
Yeah.
That really needs to be done. What good can come from an auditorium being updated? It is drastically in need of an update. There's good that will come from the remodels. Is it everything that, would be nice? No. But there are things that need to be done to make things better, and I think we need to look at that in a positive light.
And to make them safe. So,
Yes.
okay. Dual credit opportunities.
Madam Chair, we need a motion on that.
Is that an action item?
It is.
It's not
Yeah.
on mine.
I swear.
Oh, we're up
Yeah.
there.
It's the last
Yeah, I'm
one.
seeking direction from the
Okay.
board right now.
Gotcha. I'm just moving down the list. All right, moving forward, we open for a motion whether to do new or remodel only.
I'll make a motion to consider just remodel only.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Is there any other discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Okay.
You're moving along, Madam Chair.
I am, like, it's been a while. All right, public hearing.
This is we just wanted to have a spot here for information discussion to allow the board, if there's any other thoughts that came after the feedback. We will be putting this on next board meeting as an action item for the proposed, but I'll pause to see if there's any discussion.
I just wanted to ask you if you think some of that COVID money that we're getting, that has to be spent a certain way, fits in to help with that gaining loss.
It could have, but everything has a string attached to it right now to backfill.
I see.
So everything that was taken away from or reduced from the discretionary is intended, has to be used for the backfill.
Okay.
If we don't backfill, then our current budget will be under budget for this school year. That's the hardest part. Is I'm not talking about next school year.
It's this school year.
This school year's budget has not been completely finalized.
Okay.
There's portions of it that have. There's portions of it that have come through, but there still needs to be some of the things that are here. So we could have, and maybe our ESSER 3 funds would allow us to do that. But we're still waiting to hear from what the legislature is going to allow for that. So very good question. And I'm hoping that we do have some flexibility.
Mr. Williams, one thing that we haven't addressed is that we do have the second half of our ESSER 2 funds that they have not
Decided on?
decided on either. They have stated that they're only looking at the first half of our ESSER 2 funds. So there have been 3 stimulus bills ESSER 1 was when we all got our first set of stimulus checks.
Right.
ESSER 2 was the second set. And that's what they're determining right now. And they're dividing that in half. And they're looking at half for this year, half for next year. And so that half for this year is what they're putting into backfill our discretionary funds. And so we don't know what's going to happen with the second half of ESSER 2 or ESSER 3.
And part of that with the ESSER 1, we've spent that already. That's been spent with the technology, the different things that we've done here in the district. When ESSER 2 came out, that's the portion that they're looking at. The governor and the recommendation from JFAC was that the current budget remain at a net zero impact. So what a net zero impact means is if the federal government allocates funds to the schools, they want to make it zero. They don't. The goal was to not increase the budgets, and so they reduced the discretionary funding, forcing us to backfill with that because they wanted to look at a net zero. And so that's just a budget philosophy that they have. Whether or not that philosophy continues with the second half of the ESSER 2 or the ESSER 3, that's not to be determined yet. But that's where, I did express concern to our legislatures, and they understood that we're getting money. It's like we're getting a full meal. We're getting everything we need.
But you're not getting any extra, like what
No.
all this was meant to be. Was the extra
No.
to help us with all the extra things.
And the difficult part about that is, again, you have different levels of government. The federal government comes out from the federal government of education saying, this is for extra, these are the things you can use it for. But when it arrives at the state has the authority to decide how then it is passed through. And that's really but we will have a full plate of food. It's just you don't have
any dessert.
You don't have anything extra, I guess you could say.
Don't get some second helping.
All right.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on the fee increases? Okay. You said that'll be an action item on the next meeting.
Yes.
So dual credit opportunity.
So this is an exciting thing that has happened even recently in the last week. So here are some dual credit options that are new. I have on here our district mission statement: small school, big opportunities and responsibilities. And we've talked about this in our other meetings. I don't want this just to be a slogan that we say. Like, we really want to back it up with what the things that are offering. And you can see through our vision for the future. We are a small school, but we want to have a lot of opportunities and extra things for the kids. And so new dual credit opportunities for 21-22. So the College of Eastern Idaho, CEI, has distant learning opportunities available. And you can see on the other, I could take a whole hour on this, but I'm going to move through it quickly, Madam Chair. But really, CEI and Idaho State University have two different new options. So the College of Eastern Idaho, it's students can sign up for this, take classes at West Jefferson through Zoom and receive college credit. And Mr. DeMar is working on ways to make sure that this is in place and through these formats, like a board meeting on Zoom. We're trying to get these things out. But again, with a lot of the programs, it's difficult to have a million different things happening at once. So we're doing the very best we can. We met with a representative from Idaho State University, and they have a rural opportunities program, a distance learning program. And so let me highlight that one right quick. So that one is called the ISU Include. And here's some of the program highlights. Again, this is just a dual credit opportunity for these kids to take it. Idaho State is providing us with all of the technology necessary to run this. And it's going to be different than most Zoom classes or online classes where the kids just take it on their own and then check in with the teacher every once in a while. They will actually have a professor that is teaching the class and being able to interact with them during that time. And so we're having a lot of different things that are opening up for those. When this program gets completed, we will invite their representative to come in and highlight that, talk about it. And so
let's just stop kids from staying home. and doing this from home?
With the ISU Include program, and on both of them, we still have attendance. And so if the kids sign up for that, they need to be here doing that.
Okay.
So they will work with the counselor and they will find the times that will work. A lot of these classes, dual credit classes, where they're scheduled at the college, aren't gonna mesh, like ISU doesn't develop their schedule around ours. And so the West Jefferson student would have to take two, if we call them study skill classes, or blocks of time that are allocated to this, where they would work on that program at that time. So those are the things that we'd have to work out the details on it. But these other, I'm not gonna go into it, but I just wanted to highlight that we have some great things happening, starting with dual credits. Because of this, with the dual credit options, we will need to make sure that graduation requirements and other things are revisited this spring, just to make sure that everything falls in line of it. And that actually leads me to the 6.3. Are there any other questions by the board on 6.2?
Do you have the potential to take enough dual credit classes that you can leave high school with your associates? Are we to that level yet?
We're getting closer to it. I can't answer yes, but these options are open to more than just some of the regular classes. Like it's pretty extensive
That's great.
with them.
So exciting.
6.3, is that okay, Madam
Yes,
Chair?
go ahead.
All right. So looking at, again, our mission statement, opportunities, some of our beliefs, looking at the beliefs that we hold as educators is that helping all students learn at high levels. I get that we're not perfect, but I do want to say we are moving in that direction, that we're helping kids. I think our ISAT scores are one little small piece to say, show me some proof. At least that's a little bit. I don't want to say that's the only thing we should look at, but as professionals, we should be looking at what helped kids learn the most. Now, our secondary schedule this last year, in 2021, it was adapted. We combined two different bell schedules. The junior high was on a 6 period, the high school was on a 5 period. We had kids that were sharing between the same two. These are things that we've talked about in POM meetings for even a year before we went into that new COVID hit. One of the things that we have in our schedule is our mentoring or intervention period. Sometimes we call it intervention, sometimes we call it mentoring, but it's that 30-minute class period where kids are able to receive help. As I've looked at the effectiveness of that, I've had different feedback. Even in POM meetings, had parents come and say, is this really the most effective use of time? I've even shared that in some of our work meetings that we're not sure all kids are taking advantage of it. The kids that are taking advantage of it, I think benefit greatly from it. But we're starting to see that a lot of kids see that as a half an hour break where I can get on my phone or disappear or not take advantage of that. So the philosophy behind having intervention or mentoring available for students is so important when it comes to the 4 questions through our PLC. What do our students need to learn? How do we know they've learned it? What do we do when they haven't learned it? And what do we do when they have? Those are the things that guide us on these decisions. It's not just, well, what can we do with it with a schedule? How does it support what we're trying to accomplish? In the pros that we've had from the current mentoring is it allows students daily opportunities for homework help. Like every single day they can do that. But again, the con, not all students are taking advantage of it. And it does create a situation where, okay, do we have to monitor our kids leaving campus? Are they doing this? Are they in the right spot? It creates an administrative difficulty. Not only that, a pro would be teachers can help students. But a con is that it's an extra responsibility for teachers every single day. If we could guarantee that the kids just showed up and where they were supposed to be, then that would be perfect for the teachers. But part of teaching is encouraging and motivating kids, and that's not always easy for those parents that have junior high and high school kids. They're with them all day long trying to do that with them. A pro would be it allows for some groups like student council could meet during that time, but you can see that there's pros and cons both ways with that.
Isn't this a class they should be in? And they take attendance?
They are, but they take attendance, but at the same time, they have flexibility. I'm going to so-and-so's teacher to do this. And when they have 100 students that they're worrying about, you know, you've been in the classroom, you can see how every single day, how do I make sure this student is where they need to be every single day? So this, as I've received this feedback, looked at this, I've visited with several teachers at the high school and even junior high, asking their opinion, their feedback. Even in our CSI group with the junior high, we were talking about what's the effectiveness of the mentoring? Are we getting out what we need to do? So the question I think that this is evolving from is, do we continue with the mentoring intervention day every day like it looks like we're doing, or do we look at another option? And a possibility that's come from this discussion with the different groups is it better to have it every single day or maybe several times per trimester? And that's what we're looking at. So what would that look like? So the breakdown would look like this. Another thing that's kind of guided this thought is District 93, this entire year, have had kind of a blended learning day on Mondays, where they allow high school kids to come in, get extra help and assistance, plan the week, and then they go forward with it. The feedback from their patrons has been, and students have been, we like that. We feel like our students are able to come in, get the support they need in smaller groups, more focused, and then they're able to do better throughout the week.
Don't they see kids Monday morning not showing up?
They're leaving it in their hands.
They are. That's dangerous.
But it's positive though. It's dangerous, but that's a big district that has 3 high schools in it that are saying this is a positive thing that they're considering to do. So it got me thinking, could this be something we've tried some of the blended days this last year. Certain periods of the trimester had different feedback. Feedback from one teacher said, I was able to reach out and help that student that needed it more on that one day where the student was in my classroom than all of the other times, because I'm competing with so many other moving pieces during that day-to-day intervention. So that's why we're looking at that. So what right now, every single day, if we're looking at next year's calendar, we would have 77.5 hours of intervention or mentoring time built into a trimester. And if we're not utilizing that to its capacity, we should relook at that and say, where can we get a bigger bang for our buck? And so an idea would be take away the 30 minutes of daily, put 5 minutes back into a teacher's classroom, which changes it from a 60-minute class to a 65-minute class. The teachers have the kids all day long in the classes. Teachers with a little bit longer class time could complete more assignments in class. It doesn't always mean it has to be extra homework. I worry about those kids who say, well, I was really using mentoring, now what? We still have before and after school tutoring available. Mrs. Bell does that for all. And she has a lot of students that come to that already, even with mentoring. And so a possibility would be that instead of doing it daily, we take 4 times per trimester where we have an enrichment or intervention schedule. If you look at the times, it's virtually a wash. There's 77.5 hours that are committed to mentoring daily, or 77.8 committed towards the 4 times per trimester. So we're just trading it almost specifically if this is what we'll do.
But some kid could get way behind while we're waiting for that day for help.
You could. This is a practical way that it would look at. So here's what the 2 schedules would look like. And I wish I could go full screen. Yep, you just keep scrolling down, you'll see it. So on the left-hand side, you can see that it's the daily schedule with intervention. This is our current class schedule right now. And you can see it's 60 minutes per class. The intervention period is in the afternoon for 30 minutes. That school day would have 390 minutes of instruction. If we did that, where we only do it 4 times per trimester, our school day would have 389 minutes. So it's 1 minute less per day on that. One difference would be lunch would start 15 minutes later, but it would allow for a longer lunch, a 33-minute lunch compared to a 37-minute lunch. So doing it 4 times per year or trimester makes it go to that. So I had the same thought. What do we do with those kids that need it in between?
Yeah.
The kids that are behind or struggling have the option to be put into a study skills class. And these are kids that are not on special education programs. So we have things built into it. What I'm finding though is that every single day is the kids aren't taking advantage of it because it's unstructured time for a lot of them.
Do you think it would be better to try to fix that half hour instead of, fix it so it's a little more doable?
I don't know what's the difference between 30 minutes of wasted time over the entire time, or we're not proposing a wasted time for those that aren't invited on that.
It's just if I have troubles, I don't want to wait for a whole.
You don't have to. You have intervention. You have.
And then I can't stay after school because I have to ride the bus home, right?
Yeah. So what this would look like on next year's calendar. So I'm going to skip some of the details because I think these details would be one of the things when we tried our blended learning. It was during COVID. We were experimenting. I'll be honest. It was like, let's see what happens with this. But there were good things that came out of it. One thing that we learned is it has to be defined better. Teachers have to understand what it is. Parents have to understand. Parents have to be on board with this as well. So the mentoring days, it would be the last 4 Fridays in each trimester, the Fridays that are in. What a mentoring day looks like is the regular school day takes place. Transportation, buses, everybody works, everybody goes. It's not a day off. Teachers must invite students to attend. They must look at their class and say, these kids are not where they need to be. They need extra time. I don't know, I've talked about this with other teachers. The feedback I have is we just have to have it defined, and it has to have some teeth into this to make sure that kids aren't just saying, hey, a parent looks at the calendar and says, oh, these are mentoring days. I'm taking my kid out.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that happens in our district. I haven't yet been able to control the parents in the district. If they're going to leave on vacation, they're going to go on vacation. They're going to do, for some reason, they have a mind of their own. They're going to do what they want to do. But we're asking if we could use these days for the purpose, I think we'll get a better product in the end for those kids that need it. So teachers must invite students to attend. Students who are meeting learning standards may opt to complete an enrichment learning activity from home. So teachers will put together a learning enrichment activity involved. So they need to go do that and complete it. Completing that assignment is what counts for attendance for that day for those students. If students do not complete that, they are counted absent and they are invited to the next mentoring place. The other thing that would help put structure into this is we need to look at the number of days that are allowed for students to miss. Right now with COVID, it's been a crazy year with COVID. We've asked kids, if you're sick, stay home. And kids take advantage of that just like, adults do sometimes with things like that. We need to start moving away and get some accountability back into what's happening at the school. And so as we're moving away from COVID, this has been a tragic year with that. I think the board made the right decision on having to do that. But I think 6 days per trimester is too many for kids to miss, just to say, I get to miss. My teachers can't miss that many. When you look at that, teachers could really miss 1 day per month. And if we're on a 3 to 4 month trimester, why are we giving kids 6 days off? And so if kids choose not to do homework on the opt-out place, I guess that counts as one of their one. And then we need to make sure as a board, we come in with policies to say, you missed, you lose credit. Those are the types of things that will have with this, the kids need to see, this is what the purpose of, show them what it is. Our kids can rise to this. I think right now, we've become into a situation where our kids aren't striving for it because they know that we've had bailouts this whole last year. And so
No more bailouts.
well, I don't want them. I think student attendance is taken on these days. Parents may send their kids to school regardless. I don't want somebody to say this is Shane trying to recreate a 4-day calendar by doing this. This is focused on intervention on that. If you want your kid to be at school every single day and they are an A student, send them to school on these mentoring days. We will take them. They can come and work on the enrichment activities that the same kids have at the school. This is not us trying to limit that out.
But if they choose to do the activity at home, they will be counted as
Correct.
well as they're there.
They will be counted as if they're there.
Okay, all right.
And that is a requirement. They will have to do the activity. And if they don't, they're absent.
Okay.
And I would like to see them invited automatically to the next one. But that, again, it goes back to, we need parents to understand what we're looking at. We need to be able to communicate that out to the parents, what the expectations are. And hopefully the parents will support that.
Well, let's see how that goes.
Yeah, and I can see it. I might have skipped around, but the student attendance, it's just important that we track that. And I already met that. So this is what it would look like on the calendar. So this is the approved calendar in November. Bigger. Starting school on Monday the 23rd. We would have a regular schedule up until harvest. It doesn't make sense to do a blended day for intervention the first 5 or 6 weeks of school. And that's where, where Bonneville, they don't have a potato harvest. We do. And so it wouldn't make sense for us to do that. But if you look at the second half of the calendar, the end of the trimester ends on the 23rd, which was feedback from our PA meeting from parents. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 Fridays that would be used as a mentoring Friday. Second trimester comes up, regular schedule all of December. Kids come on Fridays. You get into January, and one more. You have regular Friday up to the 7th, and then end of the trimester is March 3rd. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 mentoring Fridays before the end of the trimester. This is going to allow students to also know not only is attendance important, but we need to be more clear on when you're done with the class. As we've been transitioning into standards-based and mastery learning, sometimes the kids are like, I don't really care. I can take this later on. They're going to come back and let me take this 2 or 3 weeks after the trimester. We need to become more clear on this trimester is ended at this time. If you miss credit for this, you're going to work on it for the whole next trimester, not just a couple times and let us push you through. The kids will rise to the expectation. If they know what it is, they will rise to it. Looking at the third trimester, we start in March. You go every Friday through March. You get here to the April, 1, 2, 3, 4 Fridays for mentoring, helping to make sure kids, if they're struggling with graduation, anything else, are ready to graduate by the 25th. Again, so this is a proposal that I'm putting out. I'm hoping that through this, I'll be able to get feedback from parents. I will be putting it out more to all the teachers. Not all the teachers have heard about this. There's always a pro and con with every single proposal when it comes to a schedule. But if this is something that, as I'm looking at it, if you want me to guess, I have a lot of teachers that like the idea of putting 65 minutes back in the day. It allows them to focus on their teaching of their core classes. And then they would be able to really hone in on the needs of the students at the end of the trimester. Okay. And so, I don't know, any thoughts or feedback from the board right now? Because this is the first time you're seeing it. And again, the purpose of this is to get feedback before we decide on it before. Other things that would look at that if we move to the mentoring days, again, would have to readjust and look at graduation requirements as it finishes out for those kids.
I think it's probably worth a try.
And we'll see. We don't have to, because we're not making a decision today.
Yeah. think it's worth putting out there.
But I've been asking teachers that I've talked to,
I have to say, I'm disappointed
in what way?
that we haven't made better use of our 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed about that because I thought that was really the trick to
Here's the thing that,
keeping kids current. with
here's the
their
thing that might, I don't know if I ever can make you feel better about that.
Yeah.
I think that for the 25%, this is just a rough estimate. I don't have any that are really using it every single day. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
And really, if you're looking at intervention, it's really for that lower 25 to 30%. The thing I think might have, and it's not the kids' fault. It's hard to keep kids motivated from 8:10 in the morning until 3:35 at night. Like none of us stay motivated that long.
Longer school day.
Yeah. Other thoughts or comments?
I think it's worth trying. I have a student who has not found mentoring to be the most effective thing, especially now that Chromebooks are not given to carry around. I think that can pose a challenge. They have assignments and things that they're working on online for, say, English class. So I think it's worth a try. If something isn't working, maybe something else would work better. All you can do is try it out. So.
It'll give us time to think through this and look at it, and that's why it's being brought up in the discussion information proposal.
I really like the teachers must invite students. And if you need to send your kid, you can, that's great. And if you don't complete those assignments at home, then you're invited to the next one. I like that. Some accountability there.
And it could be an incentive
Absolutely.
because, hey, if I can stay home and work on something, why not? So.
Because the enrichment activities do not have to be tedious. They can be, academics can be outside the box. It doesn't have to be go home and write a paper. It could be a lot of different exploration things. It could be things where we put on there, do something with your parent that's connected to something in your classes, and whether they journal a response and say, this is what I did, that can be efficient for the kids. If those are the kids that are already on target, more, that can be something that would help them strive for.
I like it. Other thoughts? If not, we'll move on to summer school.
All right, this is just an information. We will be holding a summer school for our English language learners and migrant students June 7th through the July 1st. That's Monday through Thursday. There may still be funding available for schools to provide summer learning services for other students who are not in those above programs, but we're waiting, again, going back to the legislature. The emails that I'm getting are do these things because we think it's going to happen. So, but we will be using our iStation scores and submitting those to the state and see if we qualify for anything, so we can offer that this summer.
The elementary school plan.
Elementary school plan for next school year. Some of this has been shared. Some of this is new information. Mr. Johnson will be the pre-K through 4th grade principal for the elementary. That's going to be for Hamer and Tarleton. Mr. Harrelson is the 5th through 8th grade principal. He oversees the 5th and 6th grade, which is the upper end elementary. School organization for 2021. Looking at the numbers, Hamer Elementary is going to have 2 grades, K1 and a 2-3 at their school. Tarleton Elementary will have 2 per each grade level. The decisions made with this, and I have reached out to parents who are in the Hamer area, so they're aware of this. This is not the first time they're getting surprised with it. When we look at the numbers, this is a decision solely on the funding formula and support units available to schools. And when you look at our district level, this is our anticipated numbers for next year. We've had about 40 kindergarten students every single year, so we're anticipating about the same with that. Hamer currently has 9 kindergartners, so it'll be in first grade next year. They've had as many as 11. We've had a lot of people move in and out during COVID, but we're anticipating about 17 for that class. Second and third grade would be about 17. The fourth grade in Hamer next year would be 5. And I know of one of those 5 students who will be moving back to their home state at the end of that time. So that number is even lower. Our current third grade class only has 34 students here at West Jefferson. So the proposal would be to combine those students together to create 2 classes. This last year, just the way that the numbers worked, where Hamer had a larger number of 4th graders, we had a smaller number of 3rd graders and a smaller number of 4th graders. We were able to combine the 3rd and 4th at Terraton. My child's been in it. I've been very pleased with it. The teacher has done a great job with that. I think the key to any time we have split classes is to try to make sure that the teachers are really able to engage with students. And we've been able to see that this year. I've had questions asked, well, what does that mean for the future? What does that mean for next year? I don't have my crystal ball. We can kind of guess from the numbers, but they do change. Each year I will look at this, and there's nothing off the table from putting a 4th grade back in Hamer and having 2.5 teachers there, including not off the table of having another split class at Terraton. It really just depends on what the numbers are to try to keep us in balance with the FTEs. And so just wanted to just inform the board that this is the direction that we're moving to for next school year. Are there any questions?
Just to clarify on the mentoring days, back to that real quick.
Okay.
Is that for elementary, junior high, and high school?
Yes, that would be for everyone. So everyone would be on the same schedule and have the same expectations.
Sorry.
Because that's the easiest for parents to make sure that, you know, we want to move away from having you're in this day, you're out this day, whether they're in or out.
Okay. Super.
Policy edits. So these were the 3,000 series that we did submit. When we submitted them to ISBA, in this review, they will come back and say, these are some changes that have happened from the state. Mrs. DeGraw, is there anything else on this? I know that's the changes for the state. Was there anything additional?
So I submit our final policies that you vote on to ISBA, and then April Hoy reviews it. And she goes, oh, well, this wording can't be changed. And so as we've gone through it, there were some things that she wanted to make sure that you guys saw or anything like that. So in this policy edits, any words that have been added is in yellow. Any words that are crossed out were removed. The final policy at the very end, if we scroll down
All the way to the
end,
bottom?
Mr. Williams.
That does make everybody sick at home.
Some
If
people
you're still with us on this marathon meeting, it's
the indication for this policy was it was written by the state and we cannot change any wording in it. And so instead of marking what I changed back to, I just reverted it back to the original thing. So that's the only policy that does not have markings.
okay. So
Does this become a first reading again then?
it does.
For these policies.
So I can go back through this and look at the changes and see if they look.
Yeah.
So,
And then we'll
so the
vote on
highlighted
it.
ones are ones that you added back in from there, and the crossed out ones are that.
Right, are the ones that I took out.
Okay.
So it's,
So if we have to have it in there, we can't do any changing, we just have to.
in the very last policy, we cannot change it.
Oh, just.
I'm almost
Just
there.
that very last.
I had to give everybody at home a chance to not be sick. Please look away from your screen.
policy.
74 pages.
I think it is, go up just a little bit, Mr. Williams.
Was that it?
Right there at the top, yeah. So it's in yellow. This policy needs to be adopted as written by the state.
Okay.
Okay?
And that's part of, as we've contracted out with ISBA, they give us that feedback and make sure that we're getting that rewrite.
May I say that was money well spent?
Well,
Yeah,
and this 3,000 series is very much our legalese stuff.
Yeah.
And so this one could possibly come back with more policies that we need to add back in. There were some policies that April noted that we might want. I haven't heard back from her yet if they are required.
Super. Thank you, Mrs. DeGraw. That's a lot. Okay. Our school board student and staff barbecue.
So just as an information, I'm excited about this year because I might be able to finish it out in a normal way as a superintendent. I haven't had a chance to see an entire year out.
That's really hard.
Like I'm crossing my fingers, knocking on wood. The elementary and junior high is going to have a barbecue at the end of the school year, and we are invited to cook. Isn't that great? So we will have that date available for you, and we're planning on having that. So
We don't
just for
have the
the
date
information.
yet.
We did set that date, Mr. Williams. Did you write?
Well, I didn't write it down. Was it the 25th, the day before graduation?
I think it's that Tuesday, yeah. And we're combining it with the water day that they do.
Great.
So we'll invite everybody.
Yeah, Mr. Burnshaw, bring your swimsuit.
Bring your barbecue.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Who has barbecues? Used to get them from British, didn't we?
Okay, our next meeting is May 20th. We need a work meeting.
We're looking at a work meeting. If you're interested in that ISBA training on the 28th,
Let me know when I'll get this.
I feel like that's in the afternoon. We could hold a work meeting prior to that before we go over there.
In the drive over.
No.
We are hoping.
Unless we want to have
set our-
Zoom. I guess we could if we have Zoom live all the way across.
We don't want to set our work meeting date until we have all of the information from JFAC.
Okay.
And then we'll schedule our work meeting once we can look at our finances.
Because one of those things is possibly reopening negotiations with the Teachers Association to complete this year's contract
And redo.
and then turn around and do next year's contract. And so those are things that we're waiting for.
Okay, super. Well, lastly then, the floor would be open for a motion to re-enter executive session.
Madam Chair, oh, go ahead.
Madam Chair, I move that we re-enter executive session.
A long night. Is there a second?
Second.
We'll do a roll call vote. Mrs. Ruby?
Aye.
Mrs. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Ritchie?
Aye.